Thank you all for coming. I have to say first that I'm really honored that Mark asked me to be part of this. As they said, we're old friends from Ann Arbor, where we both went to college, and we're both editors at the college newspaper. I knew then that Mark was from the area, like I am, but I didn't know of his intense interest in Detroit history and the stories here. And so that sort of leads me to my first question, which is what really led you to want to write this book? I remember you calling me when you were starting to work on it, and you said, I want to write a book about Detroit. And I thought, yeah, well, so does everybody, right? but this really turned out to be a very different book than most of the others that we're reading right now.
You know, I sensed that a little tiny bit when we went out to lunch that first time. You were one of the first people I did call, and thank you, first of all, for doing this. But I guess, you know, I've always been drawn to Detroit as a topic, and I thought for the longest time that it would maybe turn out to be a novel. That seemed like the way to go. Then you know, when I came back in 2009 for Rolling Stone, I was assigned to do a piece on the auto show. This was, you know, January of 2009. So you remember, you were here.
Sure.
It was you know, the car company, Chrysler and GM, were sort of on the brink of bankruptcy. Right. The former mayor was in jail, and Detroit had become sort of the poster city of the recession, basically.
Right.
So I was seeing reporters come from not only all over the country, but from all over the world, basically, to you know, cover the story, but also to kind of gawk in a weird way, and to, you know, take a few photos of the Packard plant and you know, and use Detroit as like some sort of metaphor for whatever was happening in the country. And that's probably around the time I called you, and you were like, "Oh yeah, good luck, buddy." But I did believe, I guess, that as a, you know, as someone from the area, I could, you know, hopefully bring more sort of nuance and sort of sensitivity to the topic, and that includes, I mean, that kind of nuance includes, you know, things like humor. I mean, I think. So often if somebody just comes to Detroit for a few days, right, you're just focusing on like the bleakest, you know, and most tired narratives that have been told again and again and again. And, you know, again, as you know, like Detroit is a city with, you know, fascinating characters. And yeah, if you actually talk to people and don't just, you know, take pictures of empty buildings with, right, like nobody in the picture.
Well, that's one of the things that struck me about the book, is that it's not about Detroit, the buildings, it's about Detroit, the people. And in some cases, it's just people you happened across. I mean, it's not talking heads, it's not public officials, it's not press people, it's just people you met. And that really leads me to one of my favorite stories in the book, is the day that you go down to the site of the original Fort Pontchartrain, which now has a Pontchartrain hotel on it that's sitting there empty, and you met a bunch of different people down there, but one of them was this guy Tony, and I wanted you to talk a little about Tony, how you met him, and why you included him in the book.
I thought it was just kind of a sort of telling moment. I mean, yeah, and I guess I love that kind of moment because of the serendipity of it. I just kind of happened. I'd been reading a lot of Detroit history. It wasn't long after I got here. And, you know, as probably a lot of people here know, you know, right down there near Howard Plaza is where Cadillac, the French explorer, first landed. There's a statue, and that's where the fort was. And so I'd been reading about that, and I decided it was like you know, a sort of unusually sunny day in the fall, and so I decided to just make my way down there and sit outside. And it was, you know, it was a weekday, I think, and it was pretty empty. And yeah, this guy Tony approached me. He looked like he might be sort of a street guy, like maybe homeless. I thought he was going to ask me for money, but he saw me reading, and he instead pulled out a couple of battered paperback books out of his pocket. One was The World According to Garp, and he started talking about how he loved John Irving. And then somehow he started telling me about, his experience in the prison system, and he started showing me his different scars and like his bullet wounds, and like he eventually starts telling me that, he doesn't want, people don't want to mess with him, and he yanks up his sweatshirt, and he had a kind of giant machete and then like an axe just like in his belt, and he was like, and he just said totally straight-faced, I'm a licensed carpenter, so I'm allowed to carry my tools. And I was like, right. And that was,
Only in Detroit, right?
Yeah, it was such a great Detroit, great. Great for the purposes of my narrative Detroit moment. And, it was, and his name was Tony, and like Antoine Cadillac. It was just, there was a lot of sort of resonance that appealed to me.
And so, and you're telling the story of the city through these characters who you're meeting. But one of the things that struck me about the book is that you're not so much making you're making observations. You're not making judgments, and there's not that much analysis in the book. It really is just a story of what it's like to be here now, what it's like to live here now, and you tie that in nicely with the history of the place in lots of different instances.
No, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. It's been funny because I've been doing a lot of interviews the last few days, and people want analysis. They want like kind of a sound bite. I did a bunch of radio interviews yesterday with like people in different parts of the country, and they wanted to know like, what's next for Detroit? What should we do to fix Detroit? And just like these ridiculous questions. And I tell them I didn't write a policy book, and if I could answer that question in like 30 seconds, I would be announcing my candidacy for mayor probably.
You and everybody else.
Yeah, right. So I tried really to just talk to people, and sort of let Detroiters tell their stories, and the history is, as you said, is so rich and so multi-layered. Just kind of let that come out.
Right. Another really striking part of the book for me was about the blues concerts that happen over on St. Albans. That's actually not far from where I grew up.
Right, you were
downtown
near Lafayette Park, right?
Right, and where I live now. In fact, I've been over there for that. Yeah. I'm not sure I've seen anybody else come to Detroit and actually pick up on the fact that things like that still go on in neighborhoods like that. And that's a neighborhood that if you went over there and drove through, you would really think that almost nobody lives there anymore.
Yeah. No, and I found that kind of thing very interesting. This is like, I guess, right off of St. Albans, and it's a part of, the east side of Detroit where, you'll go down some of these blocks and there's like one house left, and the grass is up to here in the summer. You really feel like you're standing in a field in the country or something. And, I found it really fascinating the way people kind of take ownership of that and can sometimes, turn it into, if not an asset exactly, like they at least make something of it. And this guy, Pete Barrow, who happens to be a cousin of Joe Lewis.
Right. And related to Tom Barrow, who's run for mayor a couple times.
Oh, right, of course, yeah. So everybody's connected.
Yeah, right.
And so he just started having these blue, there was this kind of block-long field, basically, that had once been, densely populated with, residential houses, and now it's all empty. And so he has these blues concerts there every Sunday during the summer, and it's a really great scene, and a good crowd of people comes out, and that's another sort of only in Detroit thing, I think. If you feel like, you're in Clarksdale, Mississippi or something, and you're like 5 minutes from downtown.
Right. I know you're from this area, like I said, but after Ann Arbor, you left and mostly lived other places, and then you come back to Detroit to try to tell this kind of story. Tell me about the things that surprised you about the city, things that you found that were different, that maybe you didn't expect, or things that you found that were the same, that maybe shocked you.
I guess the first thing that surprised me was how much I liked living here, to be honest. To be full disclosure, when I decided to do the piece, I moved away in '93, I guess, and my family still lives here. So I never really, a year never went by where I didn't come back to visit at least a couple